Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello there.
Josh, my friend, I have been ruined by Last of Us 2 spoilers, so I'm in a horrible state of mind. But this isn't what this news is about. It's about all things Final Fantasy, which was one of the only things I was hanging on to in terms of thinking it's not going to be a Game of Thrones, it's not going to be Star Wars, they're going to have a master plan. Tetsuya Nomura knows everything about what's going to happen going forward, but turns out he maybe doesn't.
Look, dude, I've got nothing but bad news for you today, I'm afraid. It seems as though the people working on the Final Fantasy VII Remake and its upcoming future installments, because obviously the game that we've got doesn't encompass even, a third of the original game? There is a lot of game left. There's a lot of game left to tell. And obviously, in the wake of its release, they have been doing interviews. This has been translated over on Twitter, so there's quite a few paragraphs from the director and the producer essentially saying that they're not sure what they're going to do next. They have a rough plan. They don't know how many games Final Fantasy VII is going to eventually take up, and they're not entirely sure what form they're going to take. So I'll get you some quotes.
Thank you.
The thing that fans have been kind of latching onto and the things that they've been commenting on is the idea that it was originally going to be a trilogy of games, but now they're not sure. Addressing the rumors, producer Yoshinori Kitase, yeah, thank you very much, said, "We have a rough idea on that, whether or not it's going to be a trilogy, but it's not been completely decided yet. It's impossible to talk about this right now. It seems that many people think it will become a trilogy." But then, director Tetsuya Nomura chimed in with, "It depends on how many parts the overall story will be. If we divide the story into large parts, it'll take longer to make. If we divide it into more detailed, smaller sections, then developing it will be faster. I hope to release the next one ASAP." So essentially, they're not entirely sure whether the next games are going to be these big, sprawling things in the vein of the first remake, which is about 30 to 40 hours worth of content, or whether they're going to knock them out a bit faster, but have the chunks be kind of reined in a bit smaller. I
love Nomura in terms of, I get that he's a divisive figure. I get that the direction he took Kingdom Hearts in was just increasingly ridiculous. Big anime, space, timey-wimey BS. And I get that people got really sick of it. And I get that there's, a general sort of, that's his general approach to most games these days. And that's very divisive. But I want to love that, because I'm always like, but at the heart of it, you know what you're doing, right? Like Hideo Kojima, Death Stranding, really, what's his face, Suda51, or anyone like that, Yoko Taro, like all these big over-the-top creatives, auteurs, you want to believe that they know what they're doing. But if push comes to shove, and we've invested money in this, and someone goes up to him and goes, "So you're going to make good on the stuff that you've planned?" And he goes, "Well, I've maybe kind of got a plan." But like that little line that he said about like, "Well, if we do it all, if we make larger games, it'll take longer." Yeah, it will. What are you talking about? Like that's like going like, "Well, if I use a bigger spoon, I can eat this faster." Like yes. Like what are you? Like it's just basic physics.
It's funny because, like, apparently they're already working on the next part, but they're not sure what the next part is going to be. And I don't know where you've got this mad idea where, like, this has been a big, grand plan. Because I really like Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I'm starting to realise that it's a miracle it turned out anywhere near as good as it was. Because looking back through old quotes, Benjamin this morning sent us one about how Nomura said that there was going to be no new characters in the remake, and then there was loads of new characters. And then, this is the team that the director didn't know he was directing the game until he saw it on screen in his name there. So it's always been... Sorry, go on.
There's that thing. Yeah, that's Tetsuya Nomura, who's the game's creative director. Yeah, he literally didn't know he was on the project until they showed an internal video announcing that they were going to do it to all the staff members inside Square Enix, and he was sitting there in the room, and his name came up on the screen, and he was like, "Oh, like what the." I can't say the words. What the F is that?
It's always been a bit of a mess. So, but the one shining ray of hope in this is that Final Fantasy VII Remake still turned out pretty good. You know what I mean? It overcame all those odds. It overcame apparent reboots internally in development, and it turned out really well. I do have one more concerning, or perhaps not concerning, depending on which side of the ending you fall on. I don't know whether we're going to get into spoilers. Probably not. We'll stay there.
No, we'll stay away from spoilers. We can talk around it, but
yes,
I'm in the positive camp, to keep it vague.
Yes, me too. But in that interview as well, they said that when it comes to following the story of the original Final Fantasy over the next few games, or whether they're going to diverge, they said, "We're not drastically changing the story and making it into something completely different than the original. Even though it's a remake, please assume the story of Final Fantasy Fantasy VII will continue as Final Fantasy VII always has. Now, if you have seen or heard or played through the ending, I'm having trouble reconciling that comment with what actually happens in the game, and it again makes me wonder how much of this is planned. Do they know what they're doing? What's going on?
Well, I mean, that thing from 2015 where he said there wouldn't be any new characters, like there's literally 5 off the top of my head that are brand new characters that get their own set piece moments, from Roche to Madam M to Johnny, Sam, whatever. There's new characters, left, right, and center new characters. So that's just a blatant lie from 2015. And in terms of going forward, again, we're going to stay away from spoilers, but they use up a lot of the currency of Final Fantasy VII, or a lot of the stuff they could get to. They burn through a lot of that early on, either through flashbacks, flash forwards, flashbacks, things that address the wider narrative. In a way, I remember when I first finished it, I remember thinking that I don't really need a part 2. It finishes and it says, the unknown journey will continue. And obviously we're going to keep going and doing more. But if you've played the original game, you'll know exactly which moments they're pulling from, which scenes they're literally recreating or paying tribute to or talking about or whatever. And it's just like, how do you then play that out? The way that the ending scene, the last sort of 40 minutes or so, seem to show is that everything is carte blanche. We're going to do whatever we want. And I kind of wonder whether that whole thing of him saying, oh, don't worry, we're going to stick to the story as it was, is more just like a catch-all collateral damage safety move for now.
Yeah.
Because the ending, like you said, is divisive and kind of just seems to be literally splitting the fandom in two, although I've seen people kind of come around on it once they've kind of understood what's going on. But I wonder whether he's putting a comment out like that just to be like, hey, don't worry, it's all fine. And it's kind of just another lie, because that's one of the only other ways that they can do. They can reset expectations, then they can throw you for a loop again. Because in many ways, Final Fantasy VII Remake is not Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's something else entirely. So it's not like they haven't done this stuff before. But for me, the whole point of that ending, at least the way I was interpreting it, and the reason I'm so huge on it, is because it's not deliberately going beat for beat the same thing. But I guess I throw it back to you though, like as a newcomer who didn't play the original and this was your first experience of this lore. Do you like the idea that they're kind of saying like, oh look, we are actually going to deliver on that, or does it just seem even more confusing?
Well, for me, I feel like it's just going to be kind of a continuation of what they did in the remake already, where they kind of get to have the best of both worlds. They get to hit certain beats that were already there, that people already love, but then still kind of twist them and do something different. To me, the ending and everything else that happens in Final Fantasy VII Remake suggests that they couldn't simply retread or remake stuff verbatim anymore, because they introduced so many new and different things, and like you said, they've used up a lot of stuff already that would come later and kind of compromised it a little bit. But at the same time, I do want to see at least some parts of the original remade. The reason I bought into this game to start with was to see what all the fuss was about, all those years ago with the original. I wanted to see some of those moments translated over. At the same time, I do like that they're not just giving people what they expect. It's not subversion for subversion's sake. They want to do something that, appeals to both newcomers and original players and give them a fresh experience where the stakes are still high. They're invested. They're not just invested because they played a game 20 years ago. They're invested because of what's happening in the story now, and how and the differences and the similarities and the contrasts and the juxtapositions and everything that's going on. So I kind of see what they're saying by they're going to have to, of course, still follow some beats from the original game, but it's just, I don't have much confidence in it, because it all does seem all over the place, you know what I mean? Like every single thing that they say, and they have been saying for a few years now, I always need to take it with a pinch of salt, because things about this project are changing all the time. Like one day to the next, like they mentioned taking it a day at a time, and that's must be how this project is just going to go forward for the next 20 years until it's finished.
The thing is, I remember them saying there's a certain line, again, keeping super vague. There's a character who says something towards the end of this game that refers to the fact that it is very much, going forward, they don't know. And I always took that as this meta commentary on where the development team is at and what they, their general mindset. And like I said, it ends with the unknown journey will continue. It's never been, Final Fantasy VII's never been referred to as the unknown journey before. So it kind of felt like they were sort of codifying their own uncertainty. And in a way, I love that. In a way, I'm all for, creatives being super honest about it and let's just go on this journey together. But you need to have the A to B to C underneath all that. I mean, like, even the thing is, like, there's so many comparisons to big overarching epic stories that we all went on the journey with, whether it's Game of Thrones, Star Wars, back when Lost was doing a thing. And in Lost's case, like, it dovetailed off and went over here for a bit. And then in season 6, they brought it back to the plot point that was supposed to happen after season 1. And if you, like, in that show's case, if you bookend, go season 1 to season 6, it quote unquote makes sense. But there's a whole load of stuff in the middle. It's just like, whatever. At this stage, they're not really, I guess they've said like, oh, well, the broad strokes are still going to be there. And they do still have major things to reveal, like Cloud's history and stuff like that. So they can kind of do that. But it's a weird beat. I thought the whole point of the way that this thing ended was to blow it all wide open, and then so to bring it all back in the in the official comments afterwards, it feels a bit like a contradiction and doesn't. I don't know whether its greatest strength is that they don't know and they're figuring it out. But these are the original creative team, the original team members, the original staffers from in the 90s to 1997, and whether that is just a fun ride to go on, or whether it's just ultimately off-putting that they. Even with that in mind, they still don't have an A to B plot. Like, I'm there for it anyway, but I don't know, man. It just makes me think like you could probably do with just saying something a little bit more reassuring than we don't know.
Well, it is funny because this might be reassuring to a large part of the fan base who weren't keen on the changes and do want more of a remake. So I wonder how much is in response to the reception that it's currently got, both good and bad. And I do, like you said there, I do appreciate that it is this wild ride where it's these really talented people kind of making it up as they go along, facing these challenges, and still eventually putting out something good and just making us fret along the way a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because, like, again, I'll reiterate, I had little expectations for Final Fantasy VII Remake, having not played the original and not really being a big Final Fantasy fan, but it completely won me over, even though it does have its problems. But I like that ethos, that it's almost like they're pitching themselves as these underdogs, kind of like taking on this massive project, trying to finish it. And there's a part of me that likes that. I think that's quite cool.
Well, I mean, they said they only went back to it literally because of mortality. They said that they're getting quite old and it's going to take so long to put together that they need to do it now, otherwise it'll never get done. If you want this original team to go back and do it again, it has to be now. So, like, I get that. And I in theory, like the idea of them making something that is more reactive over time. But the sheer base reality of game development means that you only react so much to what the fandom wants, how they're discussing certain plot points. They tease so much stuff throughout the remake that in the original you don't even know yet. So it's kind of fascinating, but it seems like a mix. I want to be positive on it, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because they are some of the most legendary creatives in the history of gaming. But when push comes to shove and they're just being asked, like, I want confidence from my creatives. I don't want mysterious stuff. I want them sort of teasing it out. So I guess we'll see. But let us know what you think down in the comments below of the idea that Final Fantasy VII Remake could go on for years and years. How many installments would you want it to have, and whereabouts in the story would you split them up into how the game should release? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.